start recordings. We'll see. So in this slide, just I will put two important things regarding IP addresses. One is private IP address range. Okay. Next one is what is public IP, what is private IP. In that manner, what is NAT and PAT. Okay, network address translation, port address translation, or NAT overload. Okay, what is this private IP address? What is NAT? What is PAT? What is ACL and firewalls? So that's a small thing is there. So that is also important. Just for understanding network related points. Guys, what are the private IP addresses? Class A. So in under class B, under class C. So we have a ranges, but there is a certain ranges are comes under private. What is private IP addresses? Private IP addresses non-routable. In public or internet. So in internet, your private IP address, no one knows. Already I told what is my IP address, private IP address, right? 192.168.29.119. So this is my private IP address. So these private IP addresses non-routable means in the internet it is not working. So it is only for using for internal purpose only, internally in a LAN communication only. So we use in LAN communication, not in a WAN communication, not in WAN communication. Okay, so this is the complete range of 10.0.0.0 to 10.255, 255 range. Also in some test works, it shows 10.0.0.1 to 10.255, 255, 4. So this is people write as a valid range, but this is complete range. Okay, so both are correct answers. Both are correct answers. This is the complete range. This is assigning range, means 10.0.0.1, 10.0.0.2. That is a starting range to assign up to 254. Up to 254. Okay, up to 254. Here it is when I written network ID. See, it is the starting IP address. This is starting IP address, network ID. Network ID, starting IP address. So that's why it is. It's a network ID of this particular network. Okay. So there's a lot of stories there. So we'll go to in class B. This is starting range 172, 31, 255. This is complete range. Not as a single network. So it's a multiple networks are there. So totally almost like 15 networks are there in this one. Around 15 networks we are getting. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 up to 31. So those many networks are there, but all are comes under private only. Okay. So again, in some test works, like a original range, not a complete range, it is original range is like a assigned range. Like this. So this is the class B range. Class B private IP address range. Class B private IP address range. So in a class C 192.168.255.255. So same thing 192. Actually this is the part correct only, so we don't require all these things. Because we need a complete range to avoid the confusion. Okay, guys. So these are the private IP address ranges. Okay. Next, what is this NAT and PAT? What is this NAT and PAT? So in a private, you have some IP address. I don't want to show that private IP into the public. Okay, I have a private IP address is there. I don't want to show that IP address to outside. So what I do NAT, network address translation. What it maps your internal means private IP to external means public IP. Okay, your internal IP address means inside IP address to external IP address. Network address translation. NAT and PAT. NAT and PAT. Okay. For example, your PC one IP address is 192.168.1. For example, 11. So this is your internal one. After NAT translation, your public knows your public IP address. Private inside your PC, this is your IP address. So what is your NAT do? Okay, what is your NAT do? The NAT means inside your router will configure. What is the router NAT kind of stuff will do it. I done a mistake. Okay. So it will generate a public IP address. So what is your public IP address? It may create something like some public IP address, maybe a 200, 12, 13, like this, something like this. So inside in your LAN, this is the IP address. For communicating inside your LAN network, this is the IP address. But when you are communicating outside, so we use public. So who will map from inside to outside is your NAT protocol. Network address translation we implemented at a router. Okay, so we'll implement at a router. This is NAT. One to one. So what is NAT? It is a one to one type. Meaning is one private IP or one internal IP to one public. So compulsory if you have a 10 pieces are there, you have a 10 pieces are there, means you need a 10 public IP addresses you required. You have a 10 PCs, 10 servers are there, 10 public IP addresses are there. Exactly say you have a 10 servers, so 10, so better. You have a 10 servers. You want to put all 10 servers into public. So each server having a one IP, so then 10 private IP addresses, but 10 public IP addresses required. So this is called a NAT, network address translation. The NAT, there is a static NAT and dynamic NAT is also there. The NAT, we have a static NAT, dynamic NAT, that is different point. Okay. So dynamic NAT is a random type. Okay. So that much knowledge not required, but Tell me. Okay. So what is PAT? PAT is nothing but a NAT overload. So what happened? I have a 10 machines, 10 computers are there. So I have to buy 10 IP addresses to communicate outside or outside to inside. Okay, but here it is. I cannot buy multiple public IP addresses because I'm using home address, home. So what is PAT is a port address translation. Which is nothing but NAT overload. This is nothing but a not NAT overload, network address translation NAT overload. For example, I have a PC1, PC3. Okay, so PC1, PC2, PC3, PC4, like the 10 PCs are there. So each one are having a some IP address, like a public IP address, um, like this, for example. So in general, our router is giving an IP address to us, right? Like this is I have a some IP addresses. These are a multiple PCs. So what is this PAT do? What PAT it will do? So we'll go to this router. Normally, this PAT work is done by your router, of course, and your ISP also take care of your public in generally a public internet, like in a broadband. What is this port PAT port address translation will do it? So it will load all these load to one single public IP address only, one single public only. All three are 5, 10, like that. So like for example, here it is. Example 10 PCs means 10 private IP addresses. 10 PCs or 10 devices. You can say 10 devices. Meaning is 10 private IP addresses, one public IP address. So this is a NAT overload. Means NAT means one to one, but many to one is a overloading and a NAT concept. So that is called a PAT configuration. But how it is works? It works based on the table. Like at a PAT, like at router. So the PAT translations are like this. Okay, so it maps private IP address to public IP with the help of port numbers. Help of port number. So how it is happens here? It is look like so in a router. So first PC1 send a request. PC1 send a request. So it map some port number at router. Okay, and then it will put it like this again public IP. 2234. So like a port mapping. For example, I'm communicating from my another PC. Okay. So what it will do? So when in my PC IP address is this one. At router it adds some port number. Depends upon what protocol you are using. There are some port numbers. So it's a communication based on that these port numbers only. So it will manage. See, in these two cases, our public IP address is not changing. In this case, the public IP will be changes. So I'm not written this public IP part here. So, but you can try 192.168.1. For example, 12. So I need another public IP address. Okay, I need another public IP address. Okay, so this is one-to-one public, means in this one, in the mapping, private IP and public IP mapping is there, but private IP is each private IP is mapped to other public IP like this. But here it is, your private IP is different, but public IP is same, which maps with the help of port numbers. So all our internet, our regular internet, so in India, okay, so our internet use PAT technique in our internet, means in our India, so we use PAT technique for internet purpose. Okay, so PAT technique we are using because in your home you have a multiple devices, all devices, multiple private IP addresses, but you cannot purchase multiple public IP addresses. What we will do it, we will put it on a one or a two public IP addresses only, so then we can able to reach the communication. So, but in a PAT, it's a one-way traffic type only. It means inside to outside. Okay. Only inside means private to public. Okay, if you have a server in your network, won't work here. So that's a different concept is also there. But try to understand what are the private IP address, what is NAT and PAT. Any small parts are there. Yeah, the ACL part is there. Okay, the private IP address, guys, and these are the public IP addresses. Other than this, except reserved, unused, not used, or reserved or not used, and these IP addresses remaining all are public IP only. So guys, look at here, small picture I try to draw. And to understand public and private, very simplest thing is um, you have a server. This is your server. I put a name is server A. So I connected finally through internet. I connected. Okay. So if anyone, for example, this is the web server. Why we need this one? Okay, it's okay. Like a switch. This is like a router. R is enough. We can understand, right? So finally we reach the internet outside. So that's a global shape. If you find any cloud shape kind of stuff, yeah, this is a very good cloud shape. So it is ISPs will be there in between. Finally, it is internet. If someone want to access, if someone want to access, someone is there want to access my server A. Okay, so accessing server A. Next thing, so these people want to access my server A. Someone want to access my server A. Like my server is a web server. My server is a web server. I want to access website from here. So how to access? This guy will send a request over the internet. So it reaches to your router by using public IP address. Okay. So you want to get connected from internet. You want to get connected from internet. You need a public IP address. You need a public IP address. So I need some space to write those things. Yeah, here it is. If you want get connected, want means if your server get connected from internet, you need public IP address. You need a public IP address. Okay, so this is the rule number 1. What you need a public IP. Now you don't want to put a public IP there. Okay, you don't want to put a public IP there. So why this is this? Rearranging is difficult. That's why I'm trying. Now it is. This is easy. Okay, so you need a public IP address to get connected from access from there to here. Exactly, say you want to access from here to here. We need a public IP address. Okay. Next, now, so for example, you don't want to configure server with public IP and you are using uh, private IP. Okay, or we can say, or you can say you don't want expose your server IP address, meaning is you want to mask it. You're masking it. So what we have to do? Use NAT technique. So what we will do it here? So we'll configure a NAT here. Okay, so then we use a private IP. We configure some IP, whether it is private IP or any IP, private or public IP address. We configure an IP address. For example, 192.168.10. Something like um, why am I hesitating? 80. So this is the private IP address configuration. But when it is sending an output thing, like as a server A, when it is sending server A, IP address is like 200, 18, 19, or 33, something. some different public. This public IP address compulsory you have to buy. So in private, this is IP address. After NAT, this is the public. Will reach it. So what happened? This guy want to access your web server. You'll reach up to here with your public IP address. With your public IP address. Now, so your router understand what is the request for this server, and based on the map, so it will send it to here. So this guy, this person don't know your IP address, but this person know your public IP address. This person knows your public IP address. Okay. So that is a point here, private and public. So this is the your public IP address. So you will receive a request from with this public IP address only. Again, this NAT translate into your private. What happened? So when it is received a request, so what it will do? It will send to this server with this IP address automatically. If you use any IP address, it won't be exposed outside. So that is the main point I am trying to say. And come to the PAT. PAT is for a multiple devices. For example, I have a multiple computers in my network. So I want to mask with this one. So when you received any request from outside to inside with this one, but no one knows which PC here belongs to it. Okay, no one knows which PC request is came. So same thing, same scenario. Try to understand. Here it is. If in case it is a PAT, okay, if in case it is not NAT, it is a PAT technique. Means single public IP address, multiple private IP address. Request came with a what happened here? Request with this public IP, but which private IP address we don't know. No one knows which private it is. We don't know. So when you're having a servers and you want to make the server to access, what is the implementation you have to do it? NAT only. You don't have any server and you don't want to get connected from internet. You don't want to receive any request from internet. So you can use PAT technique. All our broadbands are PAT techniques only. I hope you got the point. Guys, understand public IP address and NAT PAT. Anyone? Okay. No one is saying anything. Am I either I'm connected or disconnected? I
Yes,
don't
sir.
know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So internet is also not good sometime now, so that's why please give some answer. That is good. Good. Okay.
At my
Here it
side,
is.
there's
One more point I want to tell about a APIPA, automatic private IP address. So do not confuse with this private IP address to our private IP address. This is the private IP address ranges. If you configure to the PCs, it works. This is a error in IPv4. So APIPA range, automatic private IP address, the range is 169.254.0.0 to 169.254.0.0 254.255.255. This is the APIPA range, automatic private IP address range. When when you check IP address on your system, it's showing 169.254 anything means 169.254.10.20 30.40 50.60 whatever it is. The first two are 169.254 means you got IPPA. Okay, any networking or basic IT related interviews are attending, so like a service desk or a desktop support, technical support, network engineering. So this is a very important question, guys. So compulsory remember 169.254. It means you got a APIPA IP address. Means it's error. So why you are getting a APIPA address? Why you are getting your APIPA address? Why is important, right? So when if your device or a PC, okay, if your device is unable to get IP address from DHCP server, the device itself assigns assign its own IP address or itself assigns an IP address DHCP server. What it is, unable to get IP address from DHCP server, then device itself assign an IP address in the range of APIPA, So what to do? What is the troubleshooting thing we have to do it? So what to do? So how to troubleshoot it? Check DHCP server. Okay, check the DHCP server. What are the things you have to check it? Connection, scope. Check the DHCP scope or a range. Okay, scope or a range. DHCP scope or a range connections. Service status. Restart the service. One more is there. Not allow or a deny list meaning is MAC bindings also possible. MAC bindings. Okay, so that is we have to check it. So once we solve what it is, once DHCP issue resolved, check your device IP address change as per DHCP server. Okay, once it is DHCP issue is solved, Check that is DHCP server. Now, if device means your PC's IP address not changing, enable adapter connect disconnect kind of stuff, enable disable enable adapter connect and disconnect cables. Okay, this is the one thing. And finally, you can go to cmd ipconfig / release, and then give another command is, okay, the next command is ipconfig / renew. Two commands, first command and second command. So ipconfig release, ipconfig renew, also we can follow this part. Okay, itself. Guys, this is the APIPA range. You don't understand. If you don't understand this part, still no problem. Why it is? We are all getting an IP address from DHCP server, right? We are all getting IP address from DHCP server. If in case your DHCP server is not giving any IP address to you, any reason, what your adapter will do it? Your adapter will try to assign its own IP address. See, it is DHCP is enabled yes, meaning is I am trying to get an IP address from DHCP server. I am not able to get it. No DHCP server for this adapter. What my adapter is done? Auto configuration IPv4 169.254 105.87. So that last two digits may changes. First two are constant 169.254. It is an invalid or a error IP address. Means it is error or invalid IP address. It is a invalid IP address. So mostly it is because of DHCP server not working, not connecting, or some status issues, or sometimes it is a MAC binding kind of stuff is also there. There is a possibility. Okay. Now, once try to check the DHCP server problem is solved. Then check the device IP address. Is it changed or not? Okay, it is changed or not. So still it is not changing. So then you can disable, enable the adapter just like this. Go to adapter, right click, disable, then it is disabled. Okay, now it is enabled like this. Or you can use the command is ipconfig release or ipconfig renew. It also connect and disconnect also will give you a good thing. Okay, so this is the point I am trying to where it is. Here it is. This is APIPA. So here it is about private IP addresses, public NAT and PAT. We didn't complete this simplex and duplex. So what we do? So guys, simplex means this is source. Just I will explain, otherwise it is pending language. This is my destination. Means this is sender, receiver, or source and destination. So like that you can see it's the sender is connected to receiver. Okay. So sender at one side, receiver. Only one side communication. Simplex means it's a one side communication. This one side communication. You can send and other side it receives. You can send, other side it is receives. This is sender receiver type. You can send other side. When you are sending, other side it is receives. Whenever is other side sending, you will receive. So both are communication. It's a two-way communication. Even say two-way communication, but either send or receive. Receives. Okay, but either send or a receive. Either send or a receive, but not same time. So this is a your off duplex. This is your off duplex. So example is walkie talkie. Walkie talkie. Walkie talkie is like there is a button, press and talk. After talking, over and out, roger that, copy that. That words they use it, right? So like that. So it is. So you have to send a message and you have to tell it is a finishing line. So yeah, yes, okay, like that. So you will say when over like this. You are telling over after a send a message, right? So you speak, other person will listen. If other person want to speak, so you open the you have to release the button, he will press the button. So it two-way communication but not simultaneously. So this is a full duplex. The full duplex is like this. So full duplex example is like this. The best way to write an example is like this. Full duplex is like this. So we'll write this. It says sender, send, receiver, receives. There is a receiver, receives from sender. Means there is a source and destination. Means two are there, PC1, PC2. PC1 having sender as well as a receiver. It will send, receiver will receive it. So here it is, it will send, we will receive it. So it is a two-way communication with two different simplexes. It is also a two-way communication. So we can get a send and receive at same time. Okay, send and receive at the same time. Okay, so we use two simplex to create full duplex. Why should we leave an option which is I already given? Either you done this one or not, I don't know. So that's why I explained it. This is already explained. Okay, so I want to tell actually since 2 days I am telling and try to say about a voice layer, guys. The voice layers are very important. So I will give you small introduction. So just now only, but I want to stop recording just 1 minute.